Hey guys, what's up? So today I'm going to be reviewing a video done by Real Life Ryan talking about Oh My God Hand Berserk Chapter 362. So without further ado, let's dive into this review. And I haven't watched the video yet. This is something Roshat chose for me, so this is blind, okay? I'm not making it up. Alright, here we go.
Berserk Chapter Day is always a wonderful day. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. And it might be small, it might finish really quick, but damn, it feels good. It's just like my sex life.
Oh, he has a cool intro, okay. So this is something I need to learn because I'm trying to do better for you guys too. So take some tips on Real Life Ryan. And I'm gonna make sure I put the link to his video down below so you guys can check out his
And
original
obviously,
videos.
if you clicked on this video, you either read the chapter already or you don't care about spoilers, because I'm just going to spoil the shit out of this and go into a lot of thoughts and theories and things that have been confirmed throughout the entire series of Berserk. So much is revealed within just this one chapter of
Yes.
mysteries that have been lingering
I
for
agree.
literal decades. It is absolutely incredible about how much Kentaro Miura was able to jam pack in here. So the Berserker armor starts going crazy, and Hanar wraps a bunch of chains around it, Hellraiser style. Still got those Hellraiser influences. And I bring up Hellraiser again because we are going to see. Well, just we'll get there. You got Skull.
Okay, so the Hellraiser thing, I'm interested to hear what he wants to say about the Hellraiser stuff because I don't see how Hellraiser and Berserk intertwining, but I guess maybe demons and monsters and everything. But hey, let's find out, right?
Here, you got Gedfring, you got Hanar the blacksmith, and you've got Shirake and Morda. And
Yeah,
Hanar is saying that he is going to show Guts a memory that is seeped into the armor.
bloodstained
So
memory.
the armor itself, as was worn by its previous user, which is the Skull Knight, we already knew this before going in, but contains some sort of magical property in order to retain memories of the visions of what Skull Knight saw while he wore the armor. So this is a very interesting concept about the
Okay, so yeah, as we saw, the armor retains the memories of the last user, especially if they died in the armor. But it remains to be seen how far back it could go. Does it retain the users of all the people who won the armor or whatnot? And was Skull Knight the first and only person to wear the armor too? Because 1,000 years is a long time. Maybe the armor was made for him originally. So more to come.
armor in general, and the fact that it can kind of hold memories in between previous users. And it's also a very creative way to give Guts a vision of something that would need to be explained exposition wise within the story, but it creates a kind of narrative purpose to give him that exposition. Where
This guy, like real life Ryan, I can already tell he gets exactly what I'm saying, right? Like we need to have background stories, and the character of Guts doesn't allow for background stories like that, right? Because Guts, again, he's very stoic and very strong, and he doesn't talk a lot unless he's probed. So he's not going to go into great detail, and he's not going to probe other people on their life too, because he himself he's used to not being alone and stuff. So he's not a pro. He doesn't really care about everybody's background or the backstories and stuff. But I agree with him fully. We need expedition. We need to understand what happened in the past as the readers, right? For our sanity going forward to know what's the why, what's the reason, right? The five W's: why, who, what, when, and where, right? We need to know everything that's going on. So I agree with him on that. Back to the video.
now it's not like he just has to sit down with Skull Knight and have him talk to him for an hour. Instead, he can kind of see what's happening. And also the things with the Berserker armor really relate to what's going on with Guts. But I'll get to that in just a second after I explain what exactly we got to see here. Now, the first thing we see is a vision of the Eclipse of some sort, and it looks gigantic. It looks so much bigger than the one that we saw with Griffith. And the reason for that is this is most likely, again, not 100% confirmed. There still are a lot of mysteries here and still are a lot of teases here. It gives you just enough information so you can kind of like put the pieces together yourself, and it doesn't explicitly tell you, which is a
So before I even hear what he has to say on this, I agree with him. This looks like an insane entity, right? And like some things I was thinking about was Skull Knight. He died in the armor, right? So Guts even mentioned in that he's like, I felt it. I at that moment, you whatever. But one thing's for certain: the four original God Hand members with Void there are no longer there. So were they sacrificed to this entity or deity or whatever this thing is here? Or did Skull Knight take them out when he went into his new mode? Because I remember those who die when the Berserker armor become something else, right? So Skull Knight became a Skull Knight. But in that moment, did he die and then transform to Skull Knight and then take them out to prevent the final stuff and cause Void to go into hiding and recreate the God Hand members one by one and then finally get to Femto? And now he's going to recreate this whole entire scene on whatnot. I don't know yet, but let's hear what real life has to say.
Way to do it. But we see a gigantic, huge eclipse here with a bunch of weird, kind of crazy tentacles and scaly looking like creatures that instead of like having the Balit faces that were everywhere that was with Griffith's eclipse, this one looks like it's just like a primal, kind of like prehistoric one, is almost like what it looks like to me. And we see an image of the shadows of the God Hand in the background, and behind them, of course, the swirling vortex of souls, or like the Berserk version of hell, where all these souls go to suffer for all of eternity. And then we see a POV shot, and actually I don't know, there's probably lots of other people that called this as well, but I called that the visions of the Berserker armor that you would see would be in first person, so Guts would be getting a first person view of what happened, and that's what we as the reader would see as we're reading it, a first person view. So I really like that I called that and that it was actually what happened here. So very, very cool. Pat myself on the back for that one. But we also get to see a bunch of apostles ripped apart. If you look really closely, these apostles are being absolutely demolished and like destroyed, being cut in half. And we know that with the Berserker armor, this is possible. So this tells me that Skull Knight had his Berserker armor during his eclipse. And this is very, very important, and I'll get to that in just a moment, again, after I finish just kind of briefly summarizing the chapter. But this is very, very important that Skull Knight had the Berserker armor actually during the eclipse itself. But then before we even get a chance to really think about that, we see the next image, which kind of completely blows our fucking mind. And this is a huge game changer of the entire series of Berserk, because we see the one God Hand that we know, Void. First of all, this is Void's first appearance really since like the actual Eclipse in the Golden Age. I know there was that one panel close-up of a brain.
The guy knows his stuff. This I can see why he gets so many views. Like, yes, yes, yes. This is mind blowing, guys. Like, when I saw this panel, I had to like stop reading for a second. I was like, oh my god, Void was the original source of sin. Because everything we heard about with the five angels and the guy in the tower, it leads back to this. King Gesserit got tricked by this bastard. But alright, sorry.
End of Falcon of the Millennium Empire, but like here's a real actual like establishing shot of Void, and oh my god, it does my heart so well to see Void back in action. At least even just he's standing there still, not doing anything except looking menacingly. But oh my god, it's awesome. But the thing here that we see behind Void are four other creatures that are potentially four previous members of the God Hand. And this is absolutely monumental for the series of Berserk. This confirms, well, not necessarily confirms, but really kind of shoves in the right direction of so many theories that have been out there about the God Hand basically recycling itself as it goes through time and history. Whereas once there's five, then years later, one is cycled out for a new one, and it just kind of continues this trend. Now, that's not necessarily the case. That's not necessarily what's being confirmed here.
So I don't think that it's a cycle. Well, it is clearly a cycle, but I feel that when you get five God Hands, a pinnacle moment occurs, right? And in it, something is either being summoned or we can't go talk about the idea of evil because it's not canon yet. But something is done, and we don't know what it is exactly. But it's like the world is reset or something like that, or a new level of power is created or something. That I mean, but again, more research is required before we even dive into what it could possibly be. But man.
But like I said, it is kind of pushing in that direction of that narrative where the God Hand is not eternal. They're not around forever. They're here to enact the will of the idea of evil. Again, whether or not you want to consider the idea of evil canon or not, I believe most fans do, so we're just going to run with it. They are here to enact the will of the idea of evil, right? And so the God Hand themselves aren't necessarily eternal beings that are going to be around forever. And if there is a new eclipse that needs to happen every 216 years, add 216 up 5 times, you get 1080, which goes a little bit over the 1000-year mark. Maybe there's a reason for that. I'm not sure. I'm sure there is eventually because Kataro.
So I I agree there's a reason for that, and this is what I'm saying. I feel like in that moment when before Skull Knight like was totally gone, because remember Guts had the helmet ripped off him, so you didn't get a chance to see what happened next. But I feel, my humble opinion, right? I could be wrong. I feel like Skull Knight was able to take out at least one or two of the God Hand members, throwing off that cycle, because I felt like with everything that happened, this was like the end of the world. Or if you want to be like serious, like let's look at it this way, because it let's say Void was the first original God Hand, right? How would it even work? If he cycles like that, then the last one is with Voids. But the thing is, like I'm trying to think of how to explain it, right? I, my whole point is just I feel that the God Hands used, or the four, at least four of the members are used for something greater, because Void is the constant. So that tells us that Void is the most dangerous, and we have to be very concerned about what his actions or his intentions are.
Has thought this all out his entire life. But it does go to show that the God Hand then, 1,000 years ago, were essentially completely different except for Void. Void standing in the center here also seems to symbolize that this was Void's eclipse. So Void and the Skull Knight did have something to do with each other. They did know each other, and since he's kind of standing here looking like a
That
leader, looking like
that's
a symbolic
brilliant. Void was called the fifth member of the
representation
Skull.
of like the new God Hand, the new kid on the block, and he's like looming down, looking at Skull Knight with that kind of
Very
condescending
very
look,
good
same
theory.
way
That
that Femto looked
wow.
down on Guts. We can definitely
Bravo.
assume that this was his ascension. So we can assume that he sacrificed Geyseric's entire kingdom.
As again, I did say that I thought Void was the guy in the tower who Skull Knight was going to sacrifice and everything, but like I never even thought about it. Like he, that's why he's in the middle. That wow, that's so interesting. That's actually really very noteworthy. So okay, let's continue.
Destroyed it. It was, torn to pieces by apostles, and he became the fifth and final God Hand of that era. Now, then we also cut to Guts, and I really like this image because I mean, I don't know if this was necessarily intentional, but you see the image of the Berserker armor in kind of the wolf, hound, mad dog persona that Guts is, and then it cuts back to what Skull Knights would have looked like, just a skull helmet, and then you see the back of a character that he's holding in his hand, and because of the hair, the way that it's drawn and the color of it, you kind of almost look at it like Griffith, like oh maybe that that could be like Griffith in Guts's arms, kind of the
Well, I didn't think that at all. But I do think she has to be of like a fairy or noble origin because of the beauty and stuff of the character, but we'll see.
similarity there. Again, as time being a spiral, things are the same but a little bit different because Guts did hold Griffith in his arms like that, and then Skull Knight held someone else. From the looks of it, it was a woman, and we can clearly see that she has the brand of sacrifice on her shoulder, and she also has a very like elf island
Yeah,
style
dependent.
attire. So again, this would lead me to believe that Skull Knight knew everything about magic and elves and everything like that before his eclipse. So this is very different than Guts, where Guts didn't kind of learn about any of the stuff or get the Berserker armor until after the eclipse. Geyseric had all his beforehand. So it leads me to believe that Geyseric conquered like almost everything that there was out there, including Elfhelm at the time, or at least had an awareness of it, or at least, had some sort of connection to it, which might.
So King Gaiseric, maybe he was on a quest for power, and because he talks about his actions as a foolish king, right? Maybe he was on a quest to take over the world completely and unite all the nations and stuff, and Void was someone he knew personally as a human, and he did think unspeakable things to him, and Void obviously wanted revenge. So Void had to probably be someone very close to Skull Knight to use him as a sacrifice, and well, all these people he has to sacrifice. Man, it's all right. All right, there's a lot to take in.
Into why Puck feels that he feels kind of like an elf, or something like that along those lines. So I just feel like Geyserk had a connection to magic or magical things before this even happened. And of course, in the next image, we see her kind of fall back, assumingly dying, and we see the giant brand of sacrifice in the background, most likely symbolizing the entire kingdom. So Shirake jumps on Guts' back and does her thing to kind of bring him back. The helmet goes down, and Guts talks about, like, I just saw, like the end of everything. And then Skull Knight says, what you saw was the end of a foolish king, talking about himself, most likely, and saying that you saw the beginning of a dead man stalking the endless nights, meaning that this was the moment where Skull Knight most likely died. Okay, so that's a brief summary of what happened. So now we have a few gigantic things to talk about.
Yeah.
One thing is, if this is when Skull Knight did die, if this is when the Berserker armor rage took over, because you have to imagine, if he's watching his entire kingdom be torn to pieces,
Oh yeah.
and he's watching, assumingly, his wife or his lover or whoever it is, somebody very, very important to him, dying in his arms, then you could definitely say that this would have pushed him past the point of a near endless rage. If he's wearing the Berserker armor that brings out, your rage, your fury, your beast of darkness, the hatred, the anger within you to make you fight at your top capacity, then this would be the thing to do it. He probably fought to his heart's content. There was an endless amount of apostles. He was slaying them down and down and down until he just couldn't do it anymore, bled out and died. That is my theory on that. However, if this is when Skull Knight died, then there had to be a way for Skull Knight's soul released from the Berserker armor and be put into the skull armor that he has now. So that's a factor there that's kind of lingering too, because how did that happen? Somebody must have been there.
Okay, so look, we saw the manga talks about this already. Anybody who dies when he goes like armor becomes something beyond, right? And don't know what that means and stuff. I feel like I agree with a lot he's saying there, but I think again Skull Knight died there and he became Skull Knight. I I don't think Skull Knight's armor per se. I think what he is in fact his that's him. The armor is him. Like he is Skull Knight, you know. I could be wrong, but hey, that's why we have different channels, right?
To transfer his soul from one vessel to the other. So that's still kind of like in the ether of like wondering what exactly happened. Also, what is this horse from? He's got to have some like super powerful horse, skull horse. Come on. Also, the major thing I want to point out with Skull Knight having the Berserker armor during the eclipse is, so as we know, Flora has talked about how time is a spiral in the world of Berserk, where things happen over and over again, similarly, but just a little bit different each time. And one big difference that could be here, that could be a deciding factor in changing things maybe for the better moving forward, is exactly when the character of the struggler, being Skull Knight and then now being Guts, received the Berserker armor. Because think about this, imagine this, if Guts had the Berserker armor during the eclipse, then yes, he would have died, because he was in such a raged out, like insane, like he went berserk, literally, like in the title of the series, there you go, during the eclipse, and it would have destroyed him. He would have done the same thing and bled out. However, he did not have the Berserker armor at this point. Also, when Skull Knight broke in to save Guts, he saved Casca as well. And I'm thinking that maybe that was again for a strategic reason. Maybe
That's brilliant. Because in Skull Knight's case, he lost his loved one. Hmm. Was was she? So was his loved one possibly pregnant at that point in time too? Was she with child when she died? We don't know. We didn't see a full body and stuff, and we don't even know because Casca was with child, but she didn't look of it at the time. That's wow.
he didn't save Casca
History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, right?
because he's some ultimate grand hero. Maybe he saved Casca because Casca represents whatever this woman represented for him. And she died, and that was a catalyst for him losing himself to the Berserker armor. So now, flashing forward, if he saves Casca with Guts from the Eclipse and they both survive, that is another ripple in the water that can change things moving forward. If
You know
she's still
that.
alive and still is, the light that,
I agree with that because if you look at everything that's happened, the Moonlight Child exists because Casca survived. And we saw what happened. The Moonlight Child was the demon child that got intertwined with Griffith and became the Moonlight Child. So it does put a kink in Griffith's armor as Femto, the God Hand member. So that may come to play a pivotal part later on when the world is at the end, right?
his darkness at bay just that little bit, just enough so that the armor doesn't take over completely. If she's there, because almost every time that Guts was in the armor going crazy, we saw either the Moonlight Child show him, look at Casca, you have to look at Casca, like she is the important thing. She is the thing, the
Uh,
barrier between losing himself to that armor. And so that might have something to do with it. Again, this is just my theory. This is not something that's explicitly stated in the chapter. I'm just taking these little puzzle pieces and trying to put them together. So I'm saying that what if Skull Knight saved Casca in order to help Guts further on his journey in a way that Skull Knight himself couldn't be helped because the love of his life, his woman, did die during the eclipse. And so now if we want to look at the God Hand thing, okay, so if there were another crew of God Hand, and Void wound up being the fifth one, well, it's usually stated that, like, every 1,000 years or whatever, a God Hand would be incarnated back on Earth. Either that 1,080-year difference, the 80 years prior to the 1,000, is actually when Void became Void, and then at the 1,000-year mark, he was incarnated and either created the Holy See religion or did something, another kind of massive sacrifice in order to kind of.
so you're saying, what if Void did a Griffith and was reborn as a human? Oh, it's possible because Griffith is in human form. So what if Void is in human form too, but we just don't know who he is? But who would he be? It had to be someone very close, right? Watching what's going on. I don't know. Like it's possible, but we'll see.
Start the God Hand process. I don't know if that's at all possible, but that is kind of a theory that you could throw in there. Because you also have to think, what is the point of Falconia to begin with? What is the point of bringing Griffith back and luring everybody in there? Probably some other kind of massive sacrifice. So
Geseric
what I'm saying
sacrifice,
is maybe with
yes.
Void there were two
Yes.
sacrifices. There was his
I
eclipse,
agree.
and there was his
I
incarnation,
This
which
guy.
then either destroyed the kingdom or destroyed something more than that, and then kind of built the world from the ground up again in order to perpetuate perhaps whatever the idea of evil is. The more I
Yes.
keep thinking about it and the more I think about the idea of evil stuff, whereas, it's pretty simplistic. The idea of evil is, the representation of all of the kind of darkness in humanity, right? Humans wanting a reason and then the idea of creating that reason over and over. And so maybe the will of the idea of evil is actually really simple. Maybe all it wants to do is just to continue its own existence. And in order to do that, it has to keep people in a kind of a barbaric, warring state's age. It has to keep people from progressing. I don't know. Again, I'm just kind of throwing out all these different theories after reading this chapter because it was such a short chapter, but it gives you so much to think about. I don't know. There's so many possibilities, and that's the thing about Berserk. It shows you all these reveals, it shows you all of these things, and it reveals so much, but at the same time, it gives you so many questions. And I guess, in a
Yes.
way, that's just good storytelling. But
Yeah,
anyway,
it is.
also, I just want to shout out one of my Patreon supporters and his
Alright.
Etsy store, Coolio Magnets, down below. He made these.
So, well, overall, I have to say this video, this guy did, Real Life Ryan, it was brilliant. I agree with him. Berserk, it could give you so little, but it gives you so much at the same time. It's only 14 pages this chapter, but so many questions were like confirmed and answered, but then so many new questions just popped up and began. And I love this storytelling. It's just I wish it didn't take decades to come to fruition, but this guy is brilliant. So again, I liked how the video went. Like um, I know you talk about the Etsy store, but I'm gonna make sure I put a link down below. So make sure you check out his original video, and then you can watch this video and hear my reaction to it and everything. But like, he has some good points. Like, it's a cycle with what's going on in the Berserk world. It's a clear cycle of the sacrifice and the pain and everything. And you know, obviously Falconia, because there's right now, right, there's no real existing kingdoms because the world is in a weird state. But he did ask and answer some critical questions, right? Remember, prior to events of the eclipse, right? Humanity and stuff, they lost the ability to understand magic and everything like that, right? Guts didn't even know about magic until after the eclipse, right? And he got opened up to that world. And then you see what Griffith did. Griffith did the world tree thing, and he caused the realms to be combined again. Because remember, and now that answers that. I can actually even think about this now, right? Um, let's look at it this way. In the world of Skull Knight, back then, you clearly had the fairy lady who Skull Knight was holding, or the elf lady, right? In that world, it's good to assume that magic exists, and Skull Knight understood magic as real life Ryan mentioned. So maybe there's certain things that need to be done before a huge eclipse or huge sacrifice is made, like what we're seeing, right? Because we saw in Big Brand, there's a kingdom, so you need a lot of lives. People have to have the understanding of magic and the spiritual world. That's why apostles are in Griffith's army, and regular citizens are now able to see these apostles and spiritual monsters like the trolls and everything, and understand that here there are magical beings out there. Remember, the world of magic and real life has combined because of Griffith destroying, well, not destroying, but recreating Ganeshka into the World Tree, right? So with that being said, Griffith is doing that, and now he's linking the doors, the corridors together to link the worlds together. And then maybe the end of everything, he does one big sacrifice, and the world becomes like one big behelit, apostle-like world where I guess they absorb souls or do whatever they do for some end game destruction type of thing, right? So you guys let me know what you think and comment down below. Tell me what you think about this video. And check out Real Life Ryan's video. It's awesome. And thank you for watching. Over and out.